the whole story of the Kewpie is the Kewpie goes from place to place and does good deeds and spreads love and laughter. That's Rose O'Neal. That's what she did. They are just like their creator.
She was a little bit of everything. She was an artist, she was an illustrator, she wrote comics, she wrote poetry, she wrote novels. I mean, she could do it all.
She was an artist, she was an illustrator, she was a sculptress, she was a writer, she campaigned for women's suffrage. And she lived a very unusual life for a woman of her time.
She was a brilliant woman who had an imagination and talent that was boundless.
I think Rose is inspirational because she didn't let the circumstances around her dictate what she felt she was compelled to do. I think that if she had, she would not have been a creator in the way she was.
She was unique in so many ways with her art and the way she lived her life and the way she didn't care what people thought.
I always consider her as a Renaissance woman, and there's just so much to her that people just can't comprehend past the dolls.
Everything about her was unique. The fact that she was a woman and had this extremely successful career. She was definitely a barrier breaker and very independent woman.
Rose herself was just such a fascinating woman. She came from nothing. She was the subject of prejudice, and she overcame that.
Her artwork speaks for itself when you look at it. I mean, you go through here and you see her original works. It's beautiful.
You know, we kind of claim Rose O'Neal in the Ozarks today, but she actually didn't come from here.
Rose was born in 1874 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Her father owned a bookstore there. They had quite a nice little life, and they lived in a cottage called the Emerald Cottage, which even as a very young child she had fond memories of. Patrick O'Neal was her father. Mimi, they called her Mimi O'Neal, was their mother. Both very, very well-educated people, well-read.
They all lived in a fantasy world. You know, Mimi and Papa taught all of the kids about fairies and trolls and had lots of books about Greek mythology. Back in those days, you know, there was no TV or radio. So they read a lot, and they also acted a lot in their homes.
Rose and her older brother, John Hugh, they were reading and performing Shakespearean plays when they were like 9 and 10, just for themselves. And the family would put on plays and constantly reading the classics. She had access to all of these wonderful books that her father had.
I had already begun the principal occupation of my youth, lying on a bed, reading anything in my father's library. I remember a special feeling of isolation and comfort, being small in the middle of a wide, smooth bed. I sung, I recited, and danced. I made up plays and tormented my brothers and sisters into performing them. My father had never been an actor, but he had a passion for rolling forth Shakespearean lines and stabbing pillows.
He loved to read. He loved the theater. He loved the classics. He didn't fit necessarily into the father-provider role of that time. He wanted them to have careers, including the daughters, in what he called the sister arts. So education in the arts was very important to him for all of his children. Throughout their childhood, Mimi was the one that went to work as a teacher and supported the family when Patrick would stay home sometimes and take care of the kids when she was out teaching. They always struggled with money. When he went out west to Nebraska, instead of loading up his wagon with seed and implements you would use for farming, he took all of his books and his art. They lived in eastern Nebraska for a while in a sod hut. Patrick thought he was going to be a gentleman farmer, even though he had never farmed.
My father had romantic ideas about country life, so we went first to the Nebraska prairie. Papa's idea was to lead the glamorous life of a farmer who has nothing to do but read poetry and love. I don't remember any actual farming, for Papa went away to neighboring towns to sell books to people who did not feel the need for them.
Needless to say, you can probably imagine how well that went. There's a lot to farming.
We came to decide we were not successes as agriculturists. Rather suddenly, we abandoned the prairie and went to Omaha.
If there seemed to be a disgruntled person on the porch, she knew that they would probably be moving in the middle of the night. Rent didn't get paid, so they bounced from house to house in the Omaha area.
In the 12 years we lived in Omaha, we never really lived any place long. All our houses were rented places, except for the 3 my father built.